How about AIG? Answers in Genesis. Okay. FDR. Okay. How about DNA? Yeah. It's that big long one thing. Okay. Nucleic. Nucleonic acidosis. You threw an extra syllable in there. Thursday, August 14th, right here. The talk is called DNA, Proteins, Information, and the Origin of Life. So it's going to be packed. More than a Subway sub sandwich with the works. The speaker will be Dr. Joseph Cazell, the former president of the Arizona Origin Science Association. So you got your calendars out, you got your phone out with the calendars, Thursday, August 14th, 7 o'clock. Here's what he says. A review of the structure and synthesis of DNA and proteins demonstrates how they could not have arisen spontaneously, in other words, by accidental mutations, and had to be created simultaneously, thus answering the question, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Who can answer that question? Which came first, the chicken or the egg?
The chicken had to come first because it was created. It was created. It was created by God, and then it produced an egg. If you don't believe that, I think you're thinking backwards.
No, the answer is the chicken and the rooster. A hen. Yeah. The presentation finishes with a discussion on information and demonstrates how DNA is the most advanced information storage system known to man. The most advanced, yep. So anyway, that will be then. We'll have, we have a clipboard over here when you're after the presentation. If you want to sign up to get an email, you can just do that. We'll have it here on the front bench. We'll, during the question and answer session, immediately following the brilliant presentation that we're going to hear tonight, we'll pass this around. And we'll take up donations. We have a few new things on the book table, and these are good things. This week before this last, Creation Ministries International was having it was called the Layers of Faith Conference. It was mostly about geology. It was being held in Littleton, Colorado, and while we were there, I was able to score some samples of some things. Well, not really samples, but anyway, merchandise. Here is a 10-pack of Creation Magazine back issues. And these magazines are, they're loaded with stuff all over the place. And 10 magazines for $25, so it's like $2.50 a magazine, which is less than the subscription cost. So I got a couple of these for sale here. And I was also able to pick up, in case you have kids, grandkids, nephews, nieces, whatever, an activity book here. And if I had my hands free, I'd just kind of flip through and show you, stuff like this. It says, mazes, games, puzzles, puppets, dot-to-dot, action pages, mini-movies, coloring and matching. It's called Dinosaur Activity Book, and it is only $10. So if you know somebody, a young person who might like this, or if you're an old person and you don't want to tell anybody that you like doing these things, you can still get it for yourself. Okay, not a problem with that. We have, I mentioned this before, this video called Debunking Evolution, is what every Christian student should know. Now, I taught middle school for many years, and I've had experience with high schoolers. This was designed around middle school through high school age students. It has two young people, John and Jane, and it starts off with them having a little discussion about something in a science class. And so they go through and they show what the textbooks say, and then they dig up the evidence that refutes what the textbooks say, because the textbooks have to kind of fabricate their evidence, right? Anyway, it goes back, it's got really cute, somewhat lame for us humor, but it's the kind of humor that middle school and high school kids would really, they can kind of relate to. But there's like 12 different mini lessons in here, and so it goes through the whole thing. But it's really, really well done. As soon as we saw it, I said, I'm going to get a bunch of these. They're only $10 a piece. As adults, we like it too, and it's very fun.
What does it cost for a whole one? If it's only $10 a piece.
$10 for the. I got it. Yeah. $10 for the first one. The other are all free. Comes with it. Package deal. Anyway. So if you know somebody around that age group that you think might benefit from this, but like I say, it is fun, but it's very packed with a lot of really good information. So can't recommend that one enough. We've had some people ask about these devotional books. We have more of them available here, so that's not new, but just to remind you that we have them. And ancient DNA. This is, again, we've had this one for a little while, but you don't have to be a geneticist to understand this guy's explanation of DNA and how it works and how they're able to track with all the genetic mapping they're doing with these websites where people could send DNA information. They're able to track genetic populations across the globe and go back in time and stuff. And I just like, this is so good. So those are the usuals. And we'll leave it. Oh, and another new one here. Wonders of Creation. This is published by Apologetics Press. It has 10 different lessons in here. And total running time is about an hour, but it's only $5. And so you can learn about such critters as the platypus, the woodpeckers, the giraffe, bombardier beetle, cuttlefish, godwits, the malleefowl, and electric eels. So anyway, really good information. It's the same guy who did the Why God videos. So if any of you have the Why God videos that we sold a while back, it's the same guy. Eric Lyons is the one who does the presentations on that. Okay, that's all the time I'm going to spend promoting that. We're going to, I'll introduce the main speaker here. If you'll bow your heads and join me in a word of prayer. Gracious Father, we thank you so much for the ability to meet here in this church. We thank you for giving our speaker and his wife safe travels to come up here. We thank you for the experiences that you have given him to be able to compile this information and then to be able to share it with us to strengthen our faith and be reaffirmed once more that your word is true, that the science is good, that the history is good, and so that we know that your word is totally trustworthy. And we thank you for giving us that inspiration this evening, as we thank you in the name of our Savior Jesus. Amen. Okay, so going back, if you've been with us for a while, Jim and I first met in 2013. You were going to give a talk at that big old church down there. Yeah, Palmcroft Baptist Church. And then we discovered later that we were both on an Alaskan cruise a couple years before that, but that's immaterial. Anyway, Jim is a licensed, registered, certified, bona fide geologist. Yeah, and so he knows about geology, which includes things like volcanoes, which we're going to hear about tonight. So, would you please give him a warm welcome? Jim, talk about Hawaii.
Well, thank you, Michael. Hey, it's great coming up to Payson again. I love coming up here because it's a lot cooler than Phoenix. But the volcano's a lot hotter. So if you were at my talk last year, I gave a talk on the Hawaiian Islands from a flood perspective. Tonight's talk is not the same talk. All right? The title of my talk tonight is What's New at the Volcano? Recent Activity at Kilauea. Kilauea has been in a sequence of eruptive events called episodes that started on December 23rd of last year. And Terry and I just happened to be on the island of Hawaii, and we were able to witness one of these episodes. So it was spectacular. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And so I was really amazed. But active volcanoes draw a lot of interest from scientists, really interested in them. And the reason is when we observe a volcanic event, it gives us kind of a snapshot of what may have happened in the past. But they also collect a lot of data and the observations, and they use that information to predict future volcanic eruptions, not just in Hawaii, but for other volcanoes. So that's why Kilauea is, being the most active volcano on the planet, is heavily studied. Just a review from my talk last year, the Hawaiian Islands are part of a large chain of volcanoes. It extends up here near the Aleutian Trench and then comes down across the northern Pacific and then makes this little turn, and then this here is the island of Hawaii. Almost all of these volcanoes are extinct, and a lot of them are submerged. But down here, these volcanoes are still active. The Hawaiian Islands are not just the ones that we are familiar with, the southeastern Windward Islands. There are a series of islands called the Northwestern Leeward Islands that are still above sea level. They're primarily coral atolls now. The volcanic craters have been eroded away and have submerged below sea level, mostly. And there's just a little bit left. Probably the most recognizable is Midway. That was part of World War II, and there's still a military presence there. But these are the islands that we're most familiar with. And, this is where the current activity is occurring. There are 5 active volcanoes in the Hawaiian island chain. One is on Maui, called Haleakala. It erupted probably in the late 1700s last, but it would still be considered an active volcano. The other 4 active volcanoes are on the island of Hawaii. We don't call it the Big Island anymore because that's not politically correct. They want it called the island of Hawaii. Or Hawaii Island, okay?
But the natives say Big Island more pretty.
Yep, they do. They do. And as I said, there's 4 active volcanoes on the island of Hawaii: Walalai, Mauna Loa, Kilauea, and Loihi. Walalai last erupted, about almost 200 years ago. It's due to erupt again. It's actually ranked as one of the 4 most dangerous volcanoes in the world. And because of its location to population centers on the Kona coast. So if that volcano were to erupt, it could be very, very devastating. Mauna Loa last erupted in 2022. Loihi, based on some seismic data, probably in the 1960s. But Kilauea has been erupting for a long time. And so we're going to focus on Kilauea tonight. These type of volcanoes are known as shield volcanoes. And what they do, they look like a shield lying down, or maybe cutting a watermelon in half and laying it on a table. Looks a lot like that. And these are formed by very liquid lavas, often emitted from a single vent, but that single vent could have other flank vents that would cause flank eruptions. These get big, large. In fact, Mauna Loa, as I discussed last year, is the largest mountain on the planet. It is near, more than 35,000 feet from top to bottom. Okay, about 14,000 is above sea level. The rest of it's below sea level. It is a massive mountain, and it covers almost most of the island of Hawaii. In fact, you can take all the other islands in the Hawaiian Island main chain, and that fits into Mauna Loa. So a very huge volcano. The examples are the Hawaiian volcanoes and the Iceland volcanoes. My wife and I are actually going to Iceland in October. So we hope to see some volcanic activity, and we're going up there primarily to see the northern lights. So this diagram shows what these volcanoes look like. You've got a magma reservoir that provides a supply of magma, usually a summit caldera. You've got a central vent where the magma can make it up to the surface and then erupt as lava. And then you can have these branching conduits that can transmit lava to the flanks, creating flank eruptions. So the Hawaiian Islands right now, they're sitting over top of what's known as a fixed hotspot in the crust. It's not on a mid-ocean ridge. It's not on a subduction zone. It's just right in the middle of the Pacific Plate. And this hotspot is supplying the lava or the magma that is erupting from the Hawaiian Islands. As the Hawaiian Islands have been moving over the years and since the flood, the chain has been moving over this hotspot and the volcanoes have been erupting. So what we need is a plumbing system, and you've got the magma reservoir. You've got Kilauea caldera here, and this magma reservoir, typically right underneath Kilauea caldera, there's another magma reservoir that fills up when it's erupting. But a lot of the magma will move subsurface down the flank or down a rift zone, and then it erupt elsewhere. Pu'u'o crater was erupting for 35 years. And then what happens is that this lava will start flowing down the slope, and it creates what's known as a lava tube, and eventually makes it into the ocean. So we've got all of this pressure going on. You've got magma coming up. You've got a lot of gas that's forming. And what happens is that, and I'll show you in a diagram later, these volcanoes swell up, get a lot of pressure, and then what happens? An eruption occurs. And these eruptions, when they occur, let's say you blow up a balloon, okay? So now you've got this magma that is very close to the surface, and it's pushing on the vent. Then all of a sudden, it's like that balloon deflates, okay? The pressure is released. The volcano deflates. And what happens is you've got all this weight coming down on top of it. Boom, it comes shooting out the vent, just like a balloon. And since it's a narrow opening at the vent, in the cases of what's going on now, you get huge fountains. You've got fountains that have occurred up to 1,300 feet high. Now that's nothing compared to Kilauea Iki eruption in 1959, where they had fountains well over 2,000 feet high. All right, so massive fountaining. But this is unprecedented for Kilauea. They haven't seen this type of eruption on Kilauea ever since Pu'u'o started erupting in 1983. Oh, you've got scientists that are really looking at these volcanoes. They're really interested in them. They're trying to figure out, okay, what do these volcanoes mean? They're both looking at the same volcano, they're looking at the same evidence. On one side, we've got a scientist with a biblical worldview. Well, this scientist realizes that all volcanoes are the result of the flood. Well, the flood was brought by God on the planet in judgment for man's wickedness and sin. So he recognizes these are a consequence of sin. And he recognizes that the Bible is true, so God's word is truth. On the other hand, you've got a scientist with a secular worldview. Well, this scientist believes that the earth all of a sudden just popped out of nowhere, during something called a Big Bang, and that volcanic activity has been part of the planet ever since the time the earth started. It's been a big part of evolution and all that kind of stuff. And it's been going on for ages, billions of years. Well, they just believe that, these are random evolutionary events. And what's going on is man decides the truth. They don't rely on the Bible. So what does the Bible say? Well, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, hey, that's pretty specific. On the same day, all the fountains of the great deep burst open, and the floodgates of the sky were opened. Genesis 7:11. You know what? These fountains that have been going on at Kilauea, they're kind of like a snapshot of the fountains of the great deep. So, when you see them going, hey, that's probably what the fountains of the great deep look like on a much smaller deep scale. But when the fountains of the great deep were happening, they were all over the planet. So what are the biblical significance of volcanoes? Well, first, God used volcanic activity to start the flood. Fountains of the great deep. Big part of it. There were no volcanoes, according to the Bible, prior to Genesis 7. No mention of it in the Bible. God may have used volcanic activity on day 3 of creation when he brought the land up, but that's only speculation. So there were no volcanoes prior to the flood. You start hearing things in the Bible about volcanoes, such as Sodom and Gomorrah, wiped out by, sulfur and ash and fire and brimstone. Probably a volcanic event that occurred there and wiped out both cities. Volcanoes produced large quantities of sediments, ash, and other materials that were deposited during the flood, creating large amounts of sediment that were deposited on the continents that our Grand Canyon is now carved in. Tsunamis generated by volcanic activity. You can imagine, like Krakatoa and Tambora and other massive volcanic events creating massive tsunamis that transported sediment around the world. And then the mountains, the pre-flood mountains, were leveled by this moving water and eroded to plain, and that material was then further deposited. And finally, after the flood, the oceans that were heated by volcanoes and low temperatures caused by volcanic dust and gas resulted in a post-flood ice age. Lasted about 500 years, so further changed the planet. So tonight we're going to talk about Kilauea volcano and what's going on with the volcano. This is a picture that I took on February 17th of this year. This is a photograph taken from the Volcano House overlook. And this was after episode number 9 of the current eruption and before episode 10. And right here, there are 2 vents in here. The one on the right is known as the north vent, and the one on the south is known as the south vent. From a perspective of the other volcanoes on the island, yeah, Kilauea is the most active. It's been active for hundreds of years, all right? But in comparison to the other volcanoes, as far as elevation is concerned, it's certainly not the highest. All the other major volcanoes on the island are higher. Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa are close to 14,000 feet above sea level. I believe Waialae is even slightly higher in elevation at the top than Kilauea. But yet, you can see here that Kilauea covers the whole southeastern corner of the island of Hawaii. It's got the following, or the these characteristics. One is called the East Rift Zone. This goes through towns of Pahoa. You've got a friend that lives there. And goes into the unfortunate town of Kapoho. We'll talk about Kapoho a little bit. And then goes into Leilani Estates that were down here. Down here is the unfortunate town of Kalapana. All right? And so along this East Rift Zone, there's a 35-year-long eruption from Pu'u'o Crater, which is right here. The Southwest Rift Zone hasn't been as active, but last year there was an eruption on the Southwest Rift Zone. And then the other component of the volcano is the caldera area. Now, the caldera's been relatively active since about 2008 with brief pauses. So once again, this is a photo I took on February 20th of this year. Took this fairly close. I'm probably about somewhere in the neighborhood of about a quarter mile away from that lava flow on an overlook. And this is once again part of episode 10. And since 1983, Kilauea has been very active. So starting in the East Rift Zone, Pu'u'o Crater, that was nearly continuously eruptive from January 1983 until August of 2018. 35 years. Changed the landscape of the island, as I'm going to show you. At the summit, Kilauea Summit, there hadn't been activity at Kilauea Summit since, I think it was 1974. It'd been a long time. And in March of 2008, there was an explosion there that created an overlook crater, what's called the overlook crater. And that was almost continuously eruptive until May of 2018. The volcano was quiet for a little over 2 years, but starting in December of 2020 through September of 2023, there was an ongoing summit eruption that actually refilled in everything that was lost in May of 2018, and I'll talk about that. Once again, it was quiet for nearly another year. And then there were a series of earthquakes in the Southwest Rift Zone. There had been some earthquakes down there, but they didn't know exactly what it was. Well, all of a sudden, on June 3rd of 2024, there was a small eruption that occurred in the Southwest Rift Zone. There hadn't been an eruption in the Southwest Rift Zone since 1974. In the Upper East Rift Zone, which is within the national park, starting in late July of 2024, there was a lot of damage that was going onto the roads. There were earthquakes and swelling of the land there, and it was cracking the roadway and everything. They got a lot of swelling going on. Well, finally, from September 15th to 20th of 2024, an eruption broke free. It was a fissure eruption, had what's known as a curtain of fire, and it lasted for about 5 days, but it got a lot of people excited, and yeah, it was off the beaten path, but you could see it from the roadway. And then finally, Kilauea Summit, starting on December 23rd of 2024 to ongoing. There's been 28 fountaining episodes that have occurred. They occur about a week apart from each other. Episode 29 is about right there. They're predicting that it could happen tonight or tomorrow. Unfortunately, at press time, it hadn't happened. I checked the website. Well, what this makes Kilauea is that it's one of the most active volcanoes on the planet. It's been erupting, for 40 years. And people have been able to view it. And that's why Kilauea gets the designation of America's and the world's drive-in volcano. For the most part, you can go to Kilauea and you can safely view an active volcanic eruption. It's really nice. You've got the U.S. Geologic Survey. They're over there. They're keeping an eye on it. You got the National Park Service. They're keeping an eye on it. They know when there's going to be changes in the wind direction and, you know, what direction any of those volcanic gases, which can be fatal, are going to start moving. And they can quickly close an area to viewing. You can't hike in the crater anymore. They've closed that off. That was closed off in 2008. But, you know, there are some, like Kilauea Iki Crater, you can hike in there. It's one of the most popular hikes in the park and is a spectacular place to go. But you can see these people here, they're at Volcano House, and the pictures that I took were taken from the same viewpoint, and that fountain's about 2.5 miles away. Not from that distance. You can, you know, hear a little bit, but not a huge amount. This is another viewpoint. It's located about a little over a mile from that vent. And in 2023, I was at this viewpoint looking at a volcanic eruption. Didn't have the huge amount of fountaining, but we could see fountains at that time. And this fountain here, you can imagine the top of this bluff to the vent is about 500 feet. So you're looking at a fountain that extended like about 1,200 feet above the top of the vent. So this is about a mile away, and when we were there in 2023, we could actually hear the volcano hissing. So you could hear the... So it's really fascinating. You get over on the other side over here, which is where the Jaeger Museum used to be, and you're right above the vent, and you can hear the roaring of the volcano. It's spectacular. So I'm going to take you first to the Pu'u'o crater eruption from 1983 to 2018 in Kilauea Middle East Rift Zone. So once again, 35 years of nearly continuous eruption. There were some brief pauses here and there, but a lot of lava was emitted. This map here shows from up until from 1983 to 2012, the area of the island of Hawaii that were covered by this ongoing eruption. Here's Pu'u'o crater up here. Here's the poor little town of Kalapana. We're going to show you Kalapana in a second, what happened to Kalapana. And so this lava was just flowing down over the poly here and then making its way to the ocean. There were a couple of smaller flank eruptions here, August of 2011, and then in 1997, and then in March of 2011. So by the time May of 2018, April of 2018 comes along, this is the area that Pu'u'o had covered. Some interesting facts about this. The Pu'u'o crater is the longest and most voluminous outpouring of lava in more than 500 years. Now, they hadn't seen an eruption that lasted this long. I got this directly from the USGS website. Between January 1983 and April of 2018, more than 1.1 cubic miles of lava were erupted to more than a depth of 115 feet across that area. The flows ultimately covered an area of 57 square miles and added 439 acres of new land to the island of Hawaii. A total of 215 structures were destroyed, with the last destroyed in 2014. The last structure destroyed was a guest house in the town of Pahoa. The flow had gotten that far. It got to what is known as the transfer station. It's a refuge transfer station. It's Apa'a Street. And at that point, it flowed across Apaha Street and into a Chinese cemetery. And there was a house over there and a guest house, and the guest house burned to the ground. They never had another structure that was destroyed by the eruption of Pu'u'o. So, starting in 1983, Pu'u'o started erupting. Until the sequence of fountaining at the Kilauea summit, they hadn't seen fountaining of this scale since Pu'u'o in 1983. They had fountains that were, over 1,000 feet high. But they hadn't seen anything since that eruption until recently, when we were seeing 1,200-foot high fountains. Let's talk about poor little Kalapana. Really nice area. It's in a rainforest area, heavily vegetated. It was being developed. A lot of people living off the grid, pretty much. Got an ocean view. Really nice area. Some great snorkeling spots and everything down in here. Just a really nice area. Now, they knew that Pu'u'o had been erupting since 1983, but they weren't really feeling any threat from it. But in April of 1990, the threat was coming. And you can see the smoke up here. That's the lava flow. Where I've got circled here is Walter's Kalapana store. This is what Walter's Kalapana store looked like in April of 1990. It was a bustling business. It was a deli and general store. And a lot of people that were visiting that side of the island would come down there and eat and meet friends. And, they go surfing and everything on the beaches. But Walter's store, in a couple of months, would not be there anymore. By May 31st of 1990, here's Walter's. And you can see the lava flow is pretty much surrounding Walter's. By June 3rd of 1990, Walter's is almost completely surrounded. You can see that the lava is flowing into the ocean, and Walter's has probably been destroyed. This series of slides shows the progression of the lava flow, and you can look at the sign here, probably about 15 to 20 feet high. Well, by June 6th, here's how high the lava had come up. The store is destroyed, been burned to the ground. A week later, the lava had reached almost the top of the sign. So very fast moving lava, and Walter's is gone. So this demonstrates how fast this lava moves and how fast it gets deposited. It's a catastrophic event. Well, unfortunately, the theory of uniformitarianism doesn't take into account catastrophe. They think everything occurs slowly over time. But look, in a week, This lava came up probably about 10 feet. So very, very fast. This is a picture of episode 55 flow from Pu'o'o that I took in 2005. And I'm standing probably about 10 feet in front of that lava flow. At this point, it had a breakthrough up here, and it was flowing very, very slowly down the slope. It's relatively flat there, but once it gets to the edge, it would cascade in as a lava fall. But while I was here, there happened to be a USGS geologist there. He was collecting samples of the lava, and there's also a ranger there. So they kept an eye out for me. So did Terry. She was screaming at me for getting too close, but I felt pretty safe. And this is taken from the side. I'm about 5 feet from the edge of this lava flow where I took this picture.
I would have been hollering at you that.
But I was standing right next to the USGS geologist who was taking temperature samples and everything like that, and he didn't seem to have any issue with it. There were about 300 people out there at that site that night. It was an adventure. Getting out there was easy. Going back was difficult. It was a 3.5 mile walk back to our car, and what we had to do was follow a bunch of reflective stands that were out there, and we had to shine our flashlight on it, and so we'd be standing at one and then we'd walk to the next one, while avoiding any fissures in the lava that you could trip on and hurt your ankle or anything. And you don't want to fall in this stuff. It's sharp as glass. Yeah, most of this was Pahoehoe lava. But what happens is you get these push-ups, and so when they push up, they fracture, and it leaves these fractures, and they're hard to see at night. While we were walking back, a couple from Washington, D.C. were out there. They didn't bring a flashlight. So they followed us back. And while I was starting to work on the trail, I kind of said, boy, it's a little hot here. And so I shined my light around, looked down right below, right next to my foot. There was a bubble of molten lava that was coming up through a crack. And you can tell what molten lava looks like. It had a slight red glow to it and a silvery appearance to it. If I would have stepped in it, I would have gotten a hot foot. Yeah. So this is Pu'o'o Crater. This is a picture I took of the crater itself, the active lava lake, on June 3rd of 2011. Took this from a helicopter, and it was actually spectacular. You may think that this is hard here. No. It's just a thin crust. You step on that, you fall right through into 2,500 degree Fahrenheit lava. You don't want to do that. All right? This is a photograph that I took from a boat of the Pu'o'o flow in 2017. Terry and I were able to get down there and view this from the ocean. And we got, within about 25 yards of the lava flow. That water is pretty warm. But where we came out of, it's called Isaac Hale State Park. Well, a year later, that whole park was under lava. April 30th of 2018, okay, right before this event, there was a 6.6 magnitude earthquake that shook the whole Puna district and Kilauea crater. This set in motion the draining of the magma chamber underneath Kilauea. It also set in motion the draining of the magma chamber under Pu'o'o. All of that magma started rushing down the East Rift Zone, creating these major crater collapses. So Pu'u'o'o crater collapsed on April 30th of 2018. Kilauea Summit crater collapsed on the same day. The Kilauea crater dropped nearly 1,400 feet in elevation on one day. Pu'u'o'o dropped nearly 1,000 feet. This stopped 2 eruptions. But this magma had to go somewhere, and it moved down the rift zone into what's known as Leilani Estates. Okay, so this is Leilani Estates here, and this kind of pinkish color is the lava flow that occurred from May 1st of 2018 to about August 9th of 2018. This lava flow destroyed numerous homes and caused a lot of damage. Down in here was Isaac Hale State Park, and it's right here. Now that's where we took that boat out of. It was filled in with lava. Talking about Kapoho. Kapoho is a kind of a poor little town. Back in 1959, it was wiped off the face of the map by a flank eruption on Kilauea. Totally gone. There's this crater here that formed, and it took out Kapoho. Well, they rebuilt Kapoho. Kapoho is gone again. It got covered by lava in 2018. This lava flow came all the way down here and actually took out one of the most beautiful snorkeling spots on the island of Hawaii. This shows a picture of the lower East Rift Zone eruption from May to August 2018. I believe this is fissure number 8, which was one of the most active of the fissures. And, you know, it's erupting in somebody's backyard. This was some of the hottest, most... Yeah, the lava's flowing this way here from the vent. So the vent's here, and this lava is just pouring out of this vent. It's extremely liquid. It's moving very fast. It's extremely hot. Well, this is a quote from the Hawaii, the Big Island Revealed, the 11th edition. Imagine more than 40,000 dump trucks of lava raging down a hellish river in your neighborhood. Just look at what a dump truck is, okay? Well, you had 40,000 of those moving down through this neighborhood per hour. Quickly reached the ocean. As I said, a lot of houses were destroyed.
Roughly, what was the speed of that flow? Do you know?
Well, you know, as I said, you're imagining 40,000 dump trucks moving back.
Just trying to get an idea of foot per hour, rather foot per hour.
Probably moving at probably 35, 40 miles per hour. You know, so if you imagine how fast a dump truck moves, it's loaded. So moving very, very fast. And it was, once these things started, it was difficult to get out of the way of them. This is a picture of fissure 8 from the other side. I had a webcam set up on this, but fissure 8 erupted in somebody's backyard. Their house was spared, as far as I know. And actually the owner of that property, they give tours of fissure 8 now. You pay them $10 and they'll give you a tour of fissure 8. So Once again, a very active lava flow that was triggered by an earthquake. So let's look at Kilauea Summit from March 19, 2008 to May of 2018. Well, on March 19th, 2008, there was a massive explosion in what is known as Halemaumau crater. It's the House of Pele, is what they call it. And this massive explosion blew out a new crater in the bottom of Halemaumau. They called it the Overlook Crater. And the reason why they called it the Overlook Crater was there was an overlook right above it, looking down into Halemaumau. Well, it destroyed that overlook. There's a fence along there, burned the fence down, covered the whole area in debris. And after that time, they closed that whole section of Kilauea Crater. There's a roadway that went through there, the Crater Rim Drive, that was closed. And it was closed primarily due to volcanic gases and the potential for material to be erupting in that area. And it's a good idea that they did that. So this shows what the crater looked like, the Overlook Crater looked like. It was very deep initially and had a small lava pond in the bottom of it. But with time, as these eruptions occurred, it filled back in. So it started filling back up and actually got very close to the rim here. But in May of 2018, that's when the collapse occurred. And you can see what happened to the Overlook Crater. This is Halemaumau right here, okay, what it used to be. This is what the Overlook Crater became. Very large. All of this material slumped into the crater and dropped nearly 1,400 feet in elevation. I took this picture in February of 2020. This was from Volcano House. I'm looking across to the west of this area here, and right when I was standing there, there was a landslide right into the crater, and it released a bunch of gas. So as I said earlier, the volcano was somewhat quiet from 2018 until December of 2020. But in December 2020, there started to be a series of volcanic eruptions in the crater. And over this period of about 3 years, it actually completely filled in that 1,400 feet that had collapsed. This is what the volcano looked like in February of 2022. There was an active eruption going on down here. And you could see the glow at night, but the best time to view this eruption was in the early evening. And so we hiked out a mile to that other viewpoint that I showed you earlier. That gets you about a mile away from the volcanic event. And we could see this lava flow and some very small fountains down here. These fountains were getting to about 35, 40 feet high. I call this the Eye of Mordor because, you know, it's got this opening in the top of it here, and it looks like Mordor. So this is another picture of the same eruption, and you can start to see that lava has pretty much filled in the whole Overlook Crater by this time. I took this picture on the other side of Kilauea from what used to be the Jaeger Museum overlook, and you could see the glowing of the lava from down below. So this shows the crater and what had happened by March of 2022, and you can see that what used to be the Overlook Crater is now completely filled in. Now, just to point out some of the viewpoints that we were looking at there, this is the viewpoint at Volcano House. So looking into here, probably about 2.5 miles. This is called Kako crater, and there's a viewpoint right here, and I took those pictures of the lava flow from that point. It's about 1.5 miles away from the lava flow. Then there's what is now called Yukahuna. That's where the Jaeger Museum used to be. It's now completely destroyed. That whole area slumped into the volcano. It was unstable. So that's looking like right here, you know, probably about 1/2 mile. And then Kilauea Overlook, that other picture that I showed you earlier, probably 1/4 to 1/2 mile away from the lava flow. So this was Kilauea in February of 2023. So got a picture of a rainbow over top of the volcano. It rains a lot there. And there was an active eruption that stopped 2 days before we got there. So all we got to see was a little bit of glow on the volcanic flow. So this used to be the overlook crater here. It's completely filled in with lava. By June of 2023, there was some more activity. A vent opened up about in the location where the current vents are, and created another lava flow in here and kept adding to it. By September of 2023, there was a big fissure eruption in the crater and caused additional lava flows. But by that time, the lava flows had stopped. And nothing happened at Kilauea for about another year. Well, on June 3rd of 2024, there was a Southwest Rift Zone eruption. And once again, that involved a series of fissures that had formed. There hadn't been an eruption on the Southwest Rift Zone since 1974. There were 4 fissures here that created a very small lava flow. It only lasted a few hours, but yet it got a lot of people excited, and you could see it from the highway here in the distance. They had closed off this whole area. There's a trail that goes out to these footprints that are over here. They closed off that whole area. These footprints are very interesting because how many years ago did that happen? Yeah, 1800s. There were some warriors, Hawaiian warriors, that were in this area, and there was an eruption at Kilauea, created a bunch of ash and gases, killed off all of these warriors, and they left their footprints trying to run away. And you can go out there and you can view their footprints. They're hard to find, but you can view them. September 6th of 2024, there was an eruption on the Upper East Rift Zone. Well, what was leading up to this? Well, in September of 2024, well, Terry and I happened to be on the island at that point, and we made a visit to the volcano, and this is what we found. They had actually closed Chain of Craters Road because of earthquake activity, and it had cracked the roadway. What was happening, you had magma that was moving up from below, causing everything to swell, and the road was cracking. This shows one of the big cracks. So these were forming all along the roadway, and we were able to drive along there. They just had opened up the road, and so we could see it. And so these are indicators of a pending eruption. Well, we left a few days later, and unfortunately, the eruption started on September 15th. And it was off the roadway, so it wasn't really easy to see, but it created a fissure eruption here and erupted a large amount of magma, of lava. And this shows here that the total fissure length was about 1.1 miles, longest lava flow went about 0.9 miles, and the total lava extent was about 156 acres. So over the period of that lava flow. But this is what we came to see tonight. Kilauea Summit, ongoing eruption started on December 23rd, 2024. There was a lot of earthquake activity. The volcano was swelling at an unprecedented rate. So the USGS knew that there was an upcoming eruption. Well, from December 23rd, 2024, this slide here shows 25 episodes. Each one of them about a week apart from each other. Some of these episodes lasted a few hours, some lasted a few days. Since that time, 3 more episodes have occurred, episodes 26, 27, and 28. These 3 episodes have produced the highest fountains of this episode, and some of the highest fountains ever seen are seen since Kilauea Iki at Kilauea. These fountains have been getting up close to 1,300 feet high.
Do you look for Pele in any of the pictures?
I haven't seen her. There is a mountain down off of Kona, that they say looks like Pele lying down.
I've seen some of the fountain pictures, and the guy kind of like, you can sort of outline a figure in there, but I'm not Hawaiian.
Yeah. Well, you can go to the Hawaiian Volcanoes Observatory website, and they've got this table in there that provides the timeline of the events and the episodes. And once again, started at 12/23/24 at 2:20 a.m. And this episode 1 lasted 14 hours, paused for 16 hours, and the maximum fountain height was only like about less than 50 meters, so 150 feet. 9.3 million cubic meters of lava erupted.
How do they get that number?
What they do is they've got a rangefinder system. So what they do is that they can measure the changes in elevation as the lava is deposited, and then they put it into a model, and it provides that estimate. So these all continued. A lot of times they happen at night, sometimes they happen during the daytime, and the USGS was still trying to predict when these were going to occur. But you can see that, sometimes, the longest one was episode 3, 8.5 days, and their flows got up to just about 300 feet, or their fountains. 13 million cubic meters of lava erupted during that episode, but that was because of the long duration. This is episode 10. This is the episode that my wife and I observed. It started at 8:22 p.m. on February 19th, and it ended at 9:18 a.m. on February 20th. Now, we had been at Volcanoes National Park on the 17th, and we were hoping to see episode 10. It was delayed. And so that Tuesday on the 18th, we had to leave. We had an event scheduled. We were going to do a manta ray dive that night over on Kona, and so we were heading over there. So we left, and we kept an eye on the USGS website. And at 10 o'clock on Wednesday night, the 19th, Terry just happened to look at the website, and she said, "It's going up." So we decided we weren't going to miss out on this one, and so we packed up in the car and we drove the 2 hours to the other side of the island and got to witness episode 10. So it was pretty spectacular. We got there at about a little after 12 o'clock that night. While we were driving up to the entrance to the park, you could see this orange glow in the clouds over top of the volcano. It was absolutely spectacular. So this episode lasted 13 hours. We stayed until a little after 3 o'clock in the morning, and we drove back to the other side of the island. We felt we'd seen what we could have seen, and actually the fountaining started decreasing after we left. And when we got back to Kona, we got back there about 5:30 or so. We decided to have breakfast, and then we were going to take a nap. There were some people that were heading over to the volcano. I said, well, you better get over there pretty quick because it's still erupting. By the time they got over there by 9 o'clock, it probably had stopped. So you got to be very quick. So as you can see, these fountain durations, kind of last. They've been lasting anywhere from 8 hours to a day and a half, but the pauses are about a week apart. And then continuing on down here, and you can view these at the website. Episode 28 started on July 9th of 2025. It lasted only 9 hours. The pause duration is to be determined, and I could probably check the website now and see if it started up now. But if you happen to go to my talk in Sholo on Friday, I might have that in there. You can see that these last 4 episodes have resulted in the largest fountains. Episode 26, 380 meters high. Okay? So a very, very huge fountain. This is how quick that this is building, okay? So this is on December 20th, before the fountain cycle started. There's nothing out here, okay? But look down here, June 12th of 2025, there's a big cinder cone now built up on the rim. Several feet of tephra have been deposited to several tens of feet deep outside the crater, primarily in the downwind direction, which is generally toward the north and to the west. Okay, so this is a time lapse showing how this thing grew so fast through episode 26. So you see the cone out here on the rim. Remember, the rim here of this bluff is about 500 feet above the top of the vent. So the cinders have been building up along this area here, and they've almost joined to the top. This shows the tephra deposits before 1223. Here's where the vents are, and there's nothing here. Okay, so once again, about 500 foot change in elevation between here, and there's no tephra. But later on, you see the vents here, and you've got all of this tephra being deposited, and it's hard to see here, but it's faintly deposited here, once again, to several feet. These are the tephra deposits after episode 28, and you can see the wheel tracks in here. In fact, I believe this gentleman here, there's a close-up of him in another picture on the website, he's wearing snowshoes, so he doesn't sink down into it. Each one of the eruptions or the episodes has a precursor event or precursor activity, which includes some bubbling of the lava, and eventually overflows the crater or the vent. And this happens to be the north vent here. This is the south vent. So this bubbles up, and you get what's called gas pistoning, and then you've got these little dome fountains that grow up, you know, maybe no more than 10 or 20 feet high, and the lava starts overflowing and goes onto the crater floor. Usually, these precursor events last for several hours or even a few days before the main fountaining. But when the USGS sees it, they know that the fountain is coming. This is episode 23 precursor event, 5/21 of 2025. Now, one interesting thing, this is the electronic tilt at Kilauea Summit since December of 2024. This was where it started, and you can see how much the volcano swelled. The electronic tilt tells us how much it swells. After each episode, the volcano deflates, then it starts swelling again, then it erupts, then it swells again. And this keeps going on up until the most recent episode, episode 26, that I've got recorded here.
And what was the green line?
The green line is kind of it's another tilt meter that they have. So one is UWD raw data for a different level, and then the blue one is the one that we actually look at.
Just out of curiosity, you see this climbing and then a distinct decline. What is the period of the interval from that one, that last peak, from the previous peak and the downturn? Is there a kind of a predictability?
They're starting to get a predictability on it now, because typically what they do is they will measure the tilt and see the swell. So what happens is that immediately when the eruption starts, the volcano deflates. And then it will drop off very quickly. There will be seismic activity as the lava is being emitted. Then, once that fountaining stops, the volcano starts swelling again. So as I said, it's been going about a week, so it's anywhere from 5 to 10 days between each event.
And then the major event that kind of cascades down, is that like a year, a month, 2 months?
Well, right now, the 28 episodes through last week started on December 23rd.
So about 6 months.
Yeah, so it's over a 6-month period that there's been now we got episode 28, episode 29 is probably going to start today or tomorrow. So once again, they're about a week apart from each other. As you can see here, and I'll read it from here, average lava elevation is 3,133 feet above sea level. The maximum lava thickness is about 236 feet over 6 months that have filled the crater. The total lava extent is right now 841 acres. So it's covering that whole crater. They say about probably 80% of the crater's been filled. And total volume of lava is about 101 million cubic meters of lava that has been emitted. This map here shows through episode 24 what the thickness of lava is. It's obviously thickest near the two vents, and then gets thinner as you go across the crater. This is the crater profile since 2018, so you can remember the crater collapsed, and it was down here. Okay, well, since that time, this is the level of the crater now. So it's filled in this about 1,400 feet since 2018. So once again, moving very quickly. This is the north vent of the 2017-25 before episode 10. And these are a series of pictures that I took of episode 10. I took over 150 photos with my digital SLR, and they were fantastic. When we walked in and we saw this thing through the big picture window at Volcano House, my jaw dropped. I was totally amazed. I'd never seen anything like it before. This is Terry and I at the rim there. The eruption is about 2.5 miles away from us. So this shows that we were there. Actually, I was wearing that shirt today. And so these are a series of photos that I took of the fountaining event. These fountains are getting up to probably 200 to 300 feet high at times. There was one that went up over 500 feet, and I was on the back side of the crater when that occurred, and we were looking at the plume of gas. We couldn't see anything. All of a sudden, a bunch of lava came up over top of the rim, probably about, a quarter mile from me. And I yelled at Terry. I said, "Did you see that?" "See what?" So she missed it, but I saw it, and I'm going, wow. And I knew at that point that was over 500 feet high.
What camera and lens were you using?
I was using a Canon EOS 80D with a 100 to 300 macro zoom lens. So this just continues to show some of the details of the eruption. You can see this lava flow here. Episode 9 probably covered about 75% of the Hale Ma'u crater. I took this from Kilauea Overlook, looking down into the crater here. As I said, as the crow flies, probably about a quarter to a half mile away from the actual lava flow. And you can see the vent here. In later eruptions, you could see the fountains coming up over top of that bluff. This is a picture that Terry took, and I thought it was pretty spectacular because it's a ohia tree here. And this is the picture that I took from that other side. And so I was looking here, and this is about as high as the lava came up while I was standing here. I didn't have my camera up, or I would have gotten a good picture of it. So this is a movie that I took with my camera. It was handheld, it was my camera. I didn't have a tripod with me, but I didn't really need it. So I tried to study it as much as I could. So you can see that fountain right there got up nearly 500 feet high. So there are probably, 30, 40 people out there on the rim? So pretty spectacular to watch this.
So I texted my friend in Pahoa and said, we're watching a presentation of this, and he texted back and said, tell him to turn it off.
Turn off the
Huh. Well, Pahoa's fairly safe.
When my girlfriend and I went to Hawaii, and it had to be 1972, 73, 74, that area, can't remember the date, but we were on the littler island, and then we took the plane over because it had erupted, I thought the first time in 100 years. That have been right?
No, no.
Okay, well, so we took the car ran out of gas on the hill up. So a tour bus took us the rest of the way up, and the whole air was shaking. Did you feel the vibration of the air when you were there?
No. Now you could feel some trembling when we were over on the other side of the volcano, above the vent, and you could hear the roar. It was like a freight train.
Yeah,
It was spectacular.
yeah. Well, so I got the same impression when in Southern California, the fire was gonna go across less than a quarter mile. We got evacuated and all, but before we got evacuated, we're outside at 4 in the morning, and the whole air was shaking. And you could just feel so the two instances, I'm surprised you didn't,
I have a question.
feel that.
Could this be an explanation for the demonic curses that some people claim is in Hawaii? Could this be an explanation for that, or do you believe that there is a demonic curse in Hawaii?
I don't believe so.
You just don't believe that?
I don't believe so. This is, as I said, volcanoes are a direct result of the flood. So, that was a curse.
I have another
Yeah.
question. Devil's Tower in Wyoming.
Yeah.
Some people claim that's a volcano, and some people say it's a tree. Geologists have debated that for a long time. Why can't they figure out whether that's a tree or a volcano?
It's a volcano. It's a volcano. It's columnar joining, and so what it is, it's a volcanic throat. But let me continue here. This is a picture of episode 26. These were the maximum height, nearly 1,300 foot fountains. I downloaded this time-lapse video from episodes 25 and 24, 26. So you can see it goes off, then drops off, then it gets dark, then it stops. Then a few days later, episode 26 started. Once again, the precursor activity, and then a massive eruption from the north vent.
Do you know what the interval of elapse is?
That's probably over about anywhere from 9 to 10 hours.
No, I mean the individual frames.
Oh, so they've got webcams that they use, and the webcams are constantly recording. So they typically click a frame about every 15 minutes. So you can go to the USG HVO website and see that.
You had a time clock running at the top of
Yeah.
the video.
This is episode 28 from last week. And you can see how high it got. And this is another video. And that's basically the wind blowing that you hear, but look at that smoke plume going up there. And this is all of the tephra that's being deposited on the rim.
When you say tephra, could you explain what tephra is?
Cinders?
Cinder cone.
Yeah, so it's the same thing. So tephra, cinders. I guess tephra is more the geologic term for it. Cinder is the,
So if you held it in your hand, would it be like clinkery sand? Or is it heavy? Is it lightweight?
it's fairly lightweight, you know, and it's like the cinders you see at Sunset Crater.
Lighter than pumice?
Probably not lighter than pumice, it'll sink. In a matter of time, I'm not gonna read the Hawaiian thing, unless somebody wants me to. I tried it last time. So,
Prayer.
no, actually, this is 1 Timothy 6:20 through 21. O Timothy, guard what has been entrusted to you, avoiding worldly and empty chatter and the opposing arguments of what is falsely called knowledge, which is science, which some have professed and thus gone astray from the faith. So it's a warning from Paul that science taught falsely can cause a lot of problems. I do recommend you go to the Hawaiian Volcanoes Observatory website. You can get up-to-date information on the volcanic activity, what's going on out there. You can check monitoring data. They've got webcams. They've got all sorts of information. And they've got all of the volcanoes on the Big Island of Hawaii monitored. So you can even look at Mauna Loa. You can look at the other volcanoes and see what's going on.
You got smoke right now.
Yep. Just smoking. That's the precursor activity.
So, what about Yellowstone?
Yellowstone,
Because I keep hearing reports that it's getting ready to go.
there's a lot of activity at Yellowstone. It's a heavily monitored volcano just because of the size and the devastation it could cause. They have a Yellowstone Volcanoes Observatory. They've also got a website, so you can go to that and get up-to-the-date information.
I know, what about Stromboli in Italy? You ever go there and look? It erupts every 15 minutes.
Yeah, Stromboli is one of the few volcanoes on the planet that has an ongoing or a continuous lava lake in it. They actually call it the lighthouse of the Mediterranean. So it's constantly got a glow coming out of the top of it. Yeah, that's a very active volcano there. The whole Mediterranean coastline is very active. You've got Vesuvius and Naples Bay. That's a supervolcano. You've also got Santorini, which is also a supervolcano, and that's thought to have caused a tsunami that wiped out the city of Alexandria in Egypt. So it caused a massive tsunami across the entire Mediterranean. So that's the end of my talk. Mahalo, which is thank you in Hawaiian. And so